Citizens of Israel, in the beginning, I'd like to appeal to the families of the hostages, our brothers and sisters. Last night, I convened the government in order to approve the first stage in the outline of return of the hostages. Since the beginning of the war, I don't stop thinking about them. And I can't stop thinking about you, the family members. I met with you. I heard from you what you're going through. I heard from you about the nightmare, about the agony, the uncertainty, the worry to no end. When I meet with you, you link the pictures of your loved ones on your chest, and I and my colleagues look at each of these pictures. These pictures are a decree to act. Since the beginning of the war, in fact, we are acting tirelessly in order to bring them home, to bring all of them home. And when I say all of them, I mean all of them, including Ron and Adar, Abera and Hisham, the MIAs. We defined the targets of the war to liquidate the Hamas, to release their hostages, and to ensure that the day after Hamas, it will no longer be a threat to Israel. We said we're going to act in order to create the conditions to return the hostages, and we did. What paved the way for this outline is the combination of two big efforts. The first effort, a massive military pressure endlessly on Hamas. I want to praise the IDF and the Shabak for the fantastic job they do in order to create this pressure. The second effort is the political pressure to release our hostages. We held a very rigid negotiations, and in order to improve the outline, I just spoke to the President Biden. I thanked him for acting vis-a-vis the brokers, and in fact, we did improve the conditions. The combination of the military effort and the political effort actually made the ground to return the hostages, and I believe this will enable us to bring more hostages later on. The outline will not include release of murderers, but it does include the agreement of the Red Cross to visit the hostages and delivering medications. I heard that somebody said they say that the Red Cross never heard of it. Yes. The Red Cross will be able to visit the other hostages and to give them medications. And I expect for the Red Cross to do its job. Citizens of Israel, as a Prime Minister of Israel, I face many times harsh decisions, from a difficult decision to a more difficult decision, especially regarding the hostages. The effort to bring all of them home keeps continuing all the time. And at the moment, we can obtain the release of babies and children, mothers and women. This is a release of hostages, which is an ethical decree for us. In the history of Israel, we released the hostages by military efforts, and we did it, although it was very difficult. It happened at the Savoy Hotel in Sabena and in other cases. Even in this war, just a few weeks ago, when we released with the military action the soldier Orit Magidish. But not always it's possible to have military operations, and that's why we're not waiting. We are taking advantage of every opportunity to release our hostages, because bringing them back is a holy mission. The IDF and the Ministry of Defense are supporting it, and they kept saying that the security of our forces is going to be ensured during the truce, but the intelligence will continue. And at this time, the IDF will prepare itself to the continuation of the war. Last night, the government made a decision, and I believe wholehearted it, so do my colleagues, that this is the right decision. I thank my colleagues for the collaboration. Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense, Minister Benny Gantz, the ministers of the government, the Chief of Staff Halevi, the head of the Mossad Barnea, the head of the Shabak Bar, to General Nisan Aluv and Gal Hirsch, anybody who helped and is acting in order to obtain this release. Citizens of Israel, I want to be clear. The war continues. The war continues. We're going to continue until we obtain all our objectives, to bring back all the hostages, to liquidate the Hamas, and to make sure that the day after Hamas in Gaza, there will be no factor that educates its children to terror or that it is a haven for terrorists. Gaza will no longer be a threat to Israel. We're going to bring back the security, both to the south and the north. We are winning. And we shall continue to fight up to the final victory. And we're doing it because of the courage of our combatants and the sacrifice of our sons and our daughters, heroes of Israel. And I always remember that this victory has a heavy price. Our combatants who sacrificed themselves for all of us, our heroes who fell in order to defend their home. I spoke this evening with Avichai Barazani. Their son Dvir, a paratrooper, fell this week in the battles in Gaza. Avichai is a veteran security person. I know him for years, and he said that he wrote to his son Dvir, when you go to fight the Hamas, remember that behind you are 1,400 citizens of Israel, civilians who were viciously murdered by a terrible enemy. Avichai and Tali asked me, and so did all the bereaved parents who I spoke to, continue to the end. Continue to the final victory. Citizens of Israel, I'm standing here this evening in order to say something very clear to you. This is exactly what we're going to do. Together we'll fight, and with the help of God, together we shall prevail. On the 7th of October, Hamas waged a war against the state of Israel. They thought that this way they'll dismantle the state of Israel, that they'll stick the flag of Hamas in the center of the Negev, that through the brutal murder and the atrocious things they did, they will bring about the fact that the state of Israel will lose its will to continue to exist or to fight. They made a mistake, a very grave mistake. The result is going to be the dismantling of the Hamas organization. The day Hamas did those atrocious acts, it determined the fate of Gaza and of Hamas. Any end picture of this campaign has to include two very definite aspects. One, dismantling of Hamas as a military and governing body, and the second, returning of all the hostages to the state of Israel. I'm committed to it, so is the Ministry of Defense and the Army, and we are going to hold up to this mission. Almost a month, the IDF forces are acting within the Gaza Strip in a very determined, accurate, and lethal way. It is done with a combination of forces from the air, by sea, by land, according to the intelligence of the Shabak, and the result is decisive. We are obtaining two very important objectives. One of them, we are dismantling the Hamas organization as a fighting military body. We hit the commanders, the terrorists, the infrastructure on the ground and underground. Every day we find dozens of items that testify to who the Hamas is. We find terrorists who are investigated, and it's a great success. But in this whole thing, we also obtained something else. When the forces of IDF maneuver in the area, they bring about the conditions that enable an outline of agreement to release hostages between us and Hamas. And this is the reason for which I recommended to the cabinet to maneuver in depth into Gaza. Hamas understands only force. The more your achievement is greater, so is your chance better to bring back the hostages. We're talking about subhumans, about vicious murderers, but they understand force. And I hope that with the help of God, we will release the hostages and show the world the Israeli force and the capability to bring an outline, which is one that brings back hostages home. In every step of the IDF advancing in Gaza, they improve the chance to bring the hostages back. I hope that the outline that was finalized will in fact be implemented. The outline we obtained is better than the outlines that we had the last week. It happened because we deepened our activity, and the results on the days before, and especially last week, the results are much better, and I hope they'll be reflected in the next few days. I hear the trepidations that many of the people have by the fact that we're going to stop the war. And I say here, I and the IDF, the Shabak and the entire security system are committed to complete the war until we achieve its objectives, liquidating the Hamas and bringing back the hostages. All this I realized yesterday as well, before the meeting of the government. And side by side, the very correct solution to come to an outline of returning the hostages in the next few days, I insisted and I required to have a special section which deals with what will happen the day after the days pass, after the hostages are back. And the decision that was taken unanimously was that we continue the war in order to implement its targets, to bring back the hostages and to eliminate the Hamas organization in the Gaza Strip. The state of Israel committed to it, so is the IDF, the security system, and I personally am committed to these two things. This evening, I also have thoughts which are thoughts of difficulty and happiness side by side, of sadness on the one hand, agony, and on the other hand, of relief. I am happy and relieved that with the help of God, we shall release hostages to their home, but I also look at those who we will not succeed to release this time. And I'm saying, first of all, we're committed to bring them home. We shall continue to deepen our activity as much as needed, both in order to enhance the pressure on Hamas and also to obtain the release of additional hostages until we bring everybody who was abducted back home. The women, the children, soldiers, men and women, boys and girls, elderly, Holocaust survivors, all of them. This is my personal commitment, and I will persist until we reach this goal. Hello, everybody. Yesterday, we made a harsh but correct decision. A decision that has a responsibility to determine fates, and definitely it can save lives. Honestly, this was one of the most difficult decisions I ever made in 40 years in which I served this country. And in this war, there will be many more such decisions. I'm convinced wholeheartedly that this is the right decision. Our commitment to bring back the sons and daughters home, it's a combination of course we have to do it, and if we save one life, we say in our tradition that it is a world on its own. In my mind, this decision and this care and concern of the abducted is show of force of the Israeli society. I'd like to strengthen the families of the hostages, all of them, those who will gain the moments of uniting with their loved ones, but especially those that the threshold of their agony is going to be deeper. Those whose loved ones are not back yet. Our commitment is valid, and we shall make every effort possible in order to bring them back. I promise all the families of the abducted, we are with you, we are for you. As of tomorrow, we shall continue to meet you, we'll strengthen you, and do whatever we can, whatever is possible, so that your beloved ones will come back. And I reiterate, we are not coming back until we do it. So we're going to go back and do it. We all want to bring back the hostages, and we are all determined also to complete our mission of doing away with the threat of Hamas and changing reality. We know that the other side is testing us. They're going to try to buy time. And I say to Sinwar and to the leaders of Hamas a sentence that I learned of a general in the army. We are a nation with patience, a long breath. We survived the Holocaust and came back from the exile. We built a strong army and a flourishing society. We do not look at the reality by days. We look at the eternity of the Jewish people. And I'm determined to continue the war. All of us are determined to win. The outline that was approved yesterday, and to which, with the help of God, we're going into, doesn't divide us into right and left, religious, secular, Jews, Arabs, Druze. This outline is a reality that was imposed on all of us. Some people think that the truth and the outline are not correct, and I respect their opinion. It's not a simple choice between good and evil. It's not the good guys who want the hostages to come back or the bad guys who want them to be left there with the Hamas. There is a complex dilemma which we are facing, and a leadership that took the best decision possible. Also, people who think we made a mistake are part of this nation, and all of us are going to make sure to remain together, united, and to prevail. Before I conclude, we are now in front of a truce in the south, and we're looking at the other fronts as well. The IDF are fighting, even in this minute, in Gaza, with heroism, and dozens of soldiers are all over the borders of this country. We're all strengthening them. We are prepared for the continuation of the war. In this context, Hezbollah, that lost a lot of its people and made tens of thousands of Lebanese to leave their home, has to know that what's happening at the moment in Gaza and what happens now in the north of Gaza can also happen in South Lebanon. What happened to Gaza can also happen to Beirut. We are aware of the attempts of Iran to challenge us. We will know how to act with the proxies and with the senders. No jeopardizing of anything in Israel will be unanswered. My brothers and sisters, citizens of Israel, we are facing complex day vis-a-vis vicious enemies. We are facing harsh decisions. We'll go through these days with common joint responsibility. We shall prevail together. We shall win together. We'll continue to build and to develop our country, the only country, and the beloved one. Thank you. Questions from Channel 13? Tomorrow we'll start the first phase of the release of the hostages. In a good scenario, 4 days are going to pass, and then what? How can you ensure that at the end, after the 10th day, the fighting will go on and will not enable Sinwar to you admitted at the time that with the Shalit case, there were mistakes. And we know that there were families worried that additional Israelis are going to be released. You're talking about terrorists who wanted to murder Jews, but they didn't. What about the implications of releasing terrorists? And Minister Gantz, you wanted to approve this deal a week ago, and the ones who didn't want it was the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense. Your first question related, it was a long, long question. Have to remember, how can you ensure that Sinwar is not going to abuse the time? I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. Of course he'll try. He'll try all sorts of tricks. And there's other things that we think. We are going to do what we said we're going to do. We are committed to continue the fighting. I'm not just saying it. I just spoke to the President of the United States. He's a great friend. And I told him, Joe, we are fighting. We are having a truce in an agreement that he was privy to. He was a partner. But we're going to continue. This is a real commitment. It's not just saying it, writing it on paper. This is like carved in our hearts. We are committed to eliminate the Hamas. We are committed to create a different reality in Gaza. It shouldn't become a threat. We are committed to bring all the hostages back, and that, of course, compels us to continue to fight. The great danger I see to our existence, and the end of the day, comes from the axis of terror and evil of Iran. Iran, the danger is that they'll have nuclear weapons that will threaten us in completely different scope than it does today. And in order to stop that, I did many things. Some of them have to do with the Shalit deal, and one day I'll be able to elaborate. But one thing I'm sure of, when you release these people, you take a risk. The risk, we're not talking of murderers, you're right, you're talking about bad people, evil people, young people, women who are evil. And we will do everything possible in order to ensure, as far as we can, that they will not harm people. And that's the price we're paying in order to bring back, we hope, if it doesn't go wrong, the deal, dozens of children with their mothers and women as a first phase in this outline. And I sincerely hope that there'll be more than 50, but I cannot commit to that. I think that throughout this whole operation, to my mind, release of hostages is the supreme cause. The fight against Hamas is important and necessary and will continue for a long time. But with your permission, I think that we have to say that it doesn't matter what my opinion is, where I did lead, if I did say something last week or not. I want to explain to the public at home and also to you, the press, managing the war and the cabinet of managing the war and the fate of the hostages and the war are not a reality program on TV. This one said one, the other one said two. Irrelevant. These discussions are important. They are critical. They touch human lives, and this is the way we're going to maintain them. I take responsibility to what the cabinet is doing, according to my opinion, or even if it's not. I think this is what the Israeli citizens are expecting from me. Channel 14. Good evening, Prime Minister. I want to ask, what are the borders of the ceasefire? Let's say an organization, I don't know, launches a rocket, or by mistake, say it's lightning. And do you consider releasing also murderers, terrorists in the future? And Minister Gallant, are they going to sign that they're never going to go back to terror? What if they don't? I don't think that there's a point to elaborate now what we're going to do in this case or another. The IDF is looking into many possibilities, many more than what you mentioned. And we are taking this into account, and we are preparing to any opportunity. We don't go into it with rosy spectacles. We know exactly who we're facing. This is an enemy, I said it, an enemy that holds a baby. President said it to me. He said it to me. An enemy that holds a 9-month-old baby who doesn't even speak or walk, and they're holding him as a hostage. So you understand who we're dealing with here. We're preparing towards all the possibilities. It's not going to do us any good to start elaborating about every detail and also what we're willing to give or not willing to give. We can do it if you want a TV program, but believe me that we're talking about it in the cabinet. And I think we'd better keep these considerations at this point a bit covert. Everything that has to do with the release of hostages and the war itself, there are heavy ethical issues here, and my judgment acts only according to value-based parameters. That means that, first of all, we are risking soldiers only if the cause is worthy. I'm ready to take very big risks regarding soldiers when you have to release hostages, for example. I have the ethical power to do it, and I still never sent soldiers to a more dangerous place than that I was ever before. So I feel comfortable with it. But when we talk about ethics that have to do with the release of children and women, then you have to weigh what's at stake. And I think that what we did to think about who is going to be released and what is the price we pay, I think that's very significant. What actually brought the real weight is not who we are releasing, but the pressure we waged on Hamas. They wanted a truce in order to breathe some air, while we are really crushing them on a daily basis. That's what brought the achievement. And I hope that there'll be other achievements in the future. You're going to chase them away from Israel? The consideration where these people are going to go has to do with the decisions of the security forces. They will decide according to the government. Channel 11. Thank you, Prime Minister. I want to underscore the questions regarding the truce. What about if during the truce they will do something against Israel? And Hezbollah said they're going to hold fire to abide by the truce. Is that an opportunity for Israel to do something about North? Did you give any secret promise to Biden, to anybody else, not to take advantage of this for the North? Minister Gallant, we heard some quotations of Ismail Haniyeh, who are bragging that Hamas is going to continue to rule Gaza after the war as well. Is our target continuing to be as we thought before? We didn't give any commitments. We want to bring back security to north and to south, and we'll do it in an educated manner. You had another one? Yes, I wanted to ask whether the truce will stop if they will shoot at our soldiers. First of all, the soldiers have a permanent command. If you face a threat to your life, act. You don't need a political decision for that. That goes without saying. That's a permanent command. As for the other things, obviously, we did all the scenario possible. The IDF know exactly what's happening there. But you have to understand, we are interested to bring back all the hostages according to the outline. Or maybe more than that, but we don't give them a check without any open check to do whatever they want. Of course, that's not the situation. We're going to do it in an educated manner. After the days we allocated, we go back to war. Maybe we'll have to do it much earlier. Maybe there'll be a violation and this, we're not going to stand there like sheep. We're going to do whatever we can so that this outline will take place. But if it's violated, we'll know exactly what to do.